We begin Perek Esther, the 20th Perek in Hilchos Ishut, the laws of marriage, in the Rambam Sefer Nashim. The Rambam continues in a related vein from the previous Perek, where he was discussing one of the Tunei Ksuba, one of the conditions in the Ksuba, where there's many different components that the woman has rights to besides the primary Ksuba, is the daughter gets fed. So the Rambam gets involved in a related vein regarding the requirements to the provisions that are necessary for his daughter. Some of these Rambam is going to discuss in this 20th Perek is the obligations that a father has to give monies for his daughter to get married for nisuin, which is called parnasa. Additionally, what happens if the father is a mace? If he dies and he leaves over a daughter, how do we evaluate his obligations? If he commands b'shas misa, when he's dying, that his daughter should not get parnasa, should not get provisions from his estate, what's Allah if there's almana and a bas? If there's a widow and a daughter, which one has precedence for mezainis, for getting fed? Regarding Yeshay Mikatana, a minor orphan girl that her brother and her mother marries her off, what's halacha regarding mezainis, regarding getting fed and regarding the rights that she has? So begin halacha aleph. The Rambam first opens up with this idea of the obligations that the father has to marry off his daughter. Halacha aleph. Tzivah chacham, the sages commanded, she'itin adam in achasav ma'at lebita. A person should give a little bit from his properties, from his estate, from his assets to his daughter, because they should that she should be able to get married with it. Meaning, if there's coming with a dowry, then people are going to want to get married to her. This is what's called parnasa, which that's what's known as the nedunya, the dowry, that's providing for what she needs. Now, hamasi is bita istam. Now, if someone in general, unspecified, marries off his daughter, so he should not give less miksus from the garments, from clothing, from a wardrobe. Only should be sold at least what a husband is obligated to give, even if it's the poorest man, for his wife. Commission like we explained in Perek Yud Gimel. Now, when we say that is b'shahaya ha'avani, only if the father was poor. So again, the least he could give is what a poor husband gives to his wife. But if the father was wealthy, then it's appropriate, it's obligated, it's appropriate for him to give according to his wealth. Is marrying off his daughter that she should be able to get married, then she's coming with a whole wardrobe, so it allows her to facilitate her getting married. Halacha base. But let's say parish, let's say the father specifies alabal to the husband, to the prospective groom. She's not getting anything. He's bringing her into the marriage naked, nothing, not coming with anything. She doesn't get anything. Now, but still says the Ram, the husband shouldn't say, okay, when she comes to my house, when they finally marry her, okay, her father obviously is a certain type. When she comes to me, then I'll clothe her. No, rather he clothes her, even when she's still in her father's household. The husband's obligation to his wife, although the father's not giving, which he should, but he should already go ahead and give her the wardrobe, even when she's still in her father's house. Halacha Gimel. Let's say the father passed away. And he left over a daughter, a single girl. So we evaluate his personality. How much would he have given for her as an adunya, as a dowry, to get her married? And that's how much we give to her. And even if it's more than a tenth of his properties, which, as we'll see what happens if we don't know. Now, first says the Rambam, how do we know his personality, how much he would have given? We know it Meireya from his friends, Mudov and his acquaintances, Umasoi Matane from his business dealings, according to his status. When you put that all together, you could figure out a type of person and you could evaluate. So it says the Rambam, if he already had married off a daughter when he was still alive, we use that daughter as a barometer that he should give this. They should give the second one how much he had given the first one when he was still alive. But let's say the courts don't know his personality because he didn't live amongst them, and therefore they can't tell: is he a breita guy, a open guy, or is he more miserly, stingy? So then, if you don't know to evaluate him, then you give from his estate a tenth leparnasasa for this girl as an adunya, as a dowry to get married. Now, halacha dal. Let's say nichban is rabbis. Let's say left over many girls, many daughters that are not married. So then it goes like this: Kol shetavili nasei, which everyone comes to get married. So nois lo isra hanachasim. Then we give each one a tenth of the estate. Meaning the first one that comes to get married, you give her a tenth. The one after that, Isra Mashashiri Rishayna, she gets a tenth of what the first one left over. The one after her, Isra Mashashiri Shnir, she gets a tenth of what the second one left over. Which obviously 100, a tenth is 10, and then you're left with 90, a tenth of that is 9, and so on and so forth. Now, And even if they're all coming to get married at the same time, simultaneous, Rishonin Netelas Iser. Still, the first one that gets married gets a tenth. Vashnia, the second one, Isu Mashashir Rishonin, she gets a tenth of what the first one left over. Vashlis, the third one, Isu Mashashir Shni, she gets a tenth of what the second one left over. Even if they're 10, it's a tenth of what the previous one left over. Now, but it's not that the later one gets less because they're getting married at the same time. Rather, explains the Rambam, what they subsequently do is they then pool all the money together, and then they redivide it, that whatever that sum total is, then each one gets a tenth of that. They get a fair share of whatever those monies were, of all the tenths together. Now, why do they do it like that? So that there should be a biblical inheritance for their sons, because if the daughters would take each one a tenth, if there's 10 daughters, the sons, or whatever it is, even less than that, you get 100, you divide into 10, the son's not being less with that. So it comes out that you're not going to have the biblical Yerusha, and we don't do that. We don't do that to push away the biblical through a Takkan to override the biblical. So rather what you do is, you give them a tenth of what's left over, so you're never going to be, if you have 10 daughters and 10, and there's 100, that it's not going to use it up because you're doing a tenth of that, and and then the rest of the estate goes to the brothers, and the daughters together then divide equally amongst them, whatever that total amount was. Now the Rambam Halacha moves on to regarding the collection of this, quote, parnasa, the dowry for her to get married. Isur zeh shula parnasa, this is tenth of his estate, which is for her to be able to get married. This is not one of the 10 items, or the 7 of the Tnoi Ksuba. So even according to the institution of the sages, the early ones and the later ones, meaning, in this regard, she's only going to take from real estate, because this is not included in Takan Sagoinim, which we said, they allow even regarding metaltlin, because that was only regarding the Tnoi Ksuba. This is not one of the Tnoi Ksuba, and this, however, is only regarding this concept of Isur Nechasim. If this is like the Rambam said in Halacha Gimel that we know his personality, then she would collect even from metallim. But here we're talking about regarding the Isur Nechasim, this is only going to be from real estate. And v'yeshla, but what's included in this is Ligvas Isur says she could collect this tenth of his estate, Mischiris Harkarka, from the rent that's owed to him as a landlord, because it was already collected, then it would already be the monies, which is metallim. No, even though already, let's say, a half a year already passed since the father had leased it out, since it wasn't collected yet, it's still included like the halacha, the karka itself, because the schiris is only it's only owed at the end, so it's still considered part as the real estate, and she could collect from that rental money too. Now, let's say the brothers want to pay her off with money, with cash, instead of getting a tenth of the real estate, then nice and they could give it that way too. It's just that she's limited to the rights of the land, but if they want to give her monies, they could do that too. Halacha vav. Habaspi says, so the daughter regarding this tenth of the properties, she's like the creditor of the brothers. It's not ksuba that it's on the father, it's like on the brothers. So when she comes to collect from the brothers, she collects from the medium grade lands without an oath. Because if she was a creditor of the father, she would only take from ziburis, from the lowest grade, with an oath, like whoever's coming to collect from the orphans. Now, but since she's their creditors, so it's like a regular creditor, which gets from the bainas and without an oath. Now, v'mesu achim, but if the brothers die, then the Torah says she can collect from their sons, her nephews. Then she collects miziburis from the lowest grade, ubishvu, and with an oath that she has to swear that she doesn't have anything from the state at all. And the reason why this is different, Shari, in the Nefras, now she's coming to collect from the state of the orphans, her nieces, her nephews. Whoever's coming to collect from the estate of the orphans, only collects from the lowest grade and with an oath, like Rambam explains in the laws of loans. The halacha zayin. So if the brothers sold a mishkanu they used as security of karkavim, their father's land, which is indebted to their sister to be able to use as a dowry, so the daughter could go collect from those who bought that land, if there's nothing left, for her parnasa, for her dowry. Just like old creditors go ahead and collect from those who bought the incumbent properties. And the reason is because since this parnasa is a set amount, so the purchasers should have been careful not to buy that amount that's owed to her, in contrast to the mezainis of the isha and the banis, where there has no set amount, that we don't collect from the chasam shvat because they're taking the island. Additionally, parnasa has, the word gets out there because from the moment the father dies, everyone knows that, okay, a tenth of this property is going to this daughter to get married. Like we explained the laws of loans that a Baal Chayv could collect from the Chasim Mishabadim, she's also considered a Baal Chayv. Halacha Ches. Misha Hisi Banas Gedoilis V'Nishur Getanas. If someone marries off his older daughters, but there's still younger girls that are left over, and the father passes away without any son. So you don't go ahead and take off this tenth, this parnasa for the minor girls, where they also should get a right to get a tenth of the estate, and then to subsequently divide the estate. No, rather what you do is you divide it equally, and the reason for that is because we only instituted this halacha of parnasa of providing for the dowry for the daughters only when they're sons, because the daughters are not inheriting anything. But when they're inheriting, because there's no sons, so the daughters divided, so then they're all going to be equal. Similarly, halacha tes misha meis. So someone dies, he leaves over 2 daughters and a son. Now the first girl, she beat the clock. She was able to go ahead and get a tenth of the estate, like her halacha is that since the son is inheriting everything, so she gets a right for a tenth of the estate to use as a dowry when she gets married. But the second daughter didn't get a chance yet to collect her tenth at Shemesa Ben. And then by that time the son, her brother, already passed away. So now the whole estate fell to these 2 daughters, and they are equal inheritors. Then the second girl is not going to be able to take a tenth beforehand. Rather, what they do is divide it equally, because a daughter on a daughter doesn't get East in the Chasim, because they both have equal inheritance rights. And the first one got it. She was lucky. She had that mazel. She merited in the first tenth, and then they divide the rest between the 2 of them. Halacha Yud. Let's say someone commanded at the time of his death, I don't want you to provide for the dowry for my daughters from my estate. We listen to him. This is not from the stipulations of the ksuba document. Rather, it's an obligation on the orphans, like we said previous halacha and halacha vav, that it's the balchayv of the sons. So if the father commands not to give, so then there's no obligation whatsoever. In contrast to the Tnai Ksuba, that is obligated, as we had previously said, that he can't do, but this is not from Tnai Ksuba. It's a mitzvah that he should do, but if he commands not, then they don't give. Halacha Yidalf. Misha Meis. Someone passes away. V'nich almano bas, and leaves over a widow and a daughter. So it says Rambam, Kavar Brown already explained the previous parak, Shemazen Salmano koid min lemazen zabas, that regarding sustenance for food, the widow gets before the daughter. Now, same thing applies to if the daughter is getting married. She does not take her tenth of the estate, where it's going to diminish from the ability of the widow getting her food, because we learn that from the halacha of food, where if food, which is from Nag Suba, we say that the widow gets and not her, for sure the tenth of the estate, which is only Takan Zachamim, then for sure the widow is going to get it and not the daughter. And the reason for that is because the widow is actually the Balchayv of the father. The daughter is the Balchayv of the brothers. So the widow gets before that of the daughter. Now, even if if the daughter dies after she got married, so the husband, which inherits his wife, does not inherit the panasa which is fit for her. In other words, there would be a lumdus over here. We don't say that, okay, this person, he's not the Yerush of the father, he's the Yerush of his wife. Now, he has halacha as a lekeach of the wife. And we don't remove for the food of the almana from the chasim shabadim, only for the benefit of the wife. They make him like the Yerush. A Yerush could remove from the sustenance of the widow. So maybe you would think to say that he gets the rights, the husband is inheriting his wife. Says the Rambam, no, sharing the chasim kol mecheskel almana, because all the properties are in the possession of the widow, that she should get fed from them. So therefore the daughter has no rights, and when she passes away, her husband has no way of taking out that monies to go ahead and preclude his mother-in-law, the widow, from having food. Now, Halach Yud Beis, the Rambam continues regarding the collection of this parnasa of the dowry of the orphan girl at a later point in time. Halach Yud Beis. Ketani Yisema, so if there's a minor orphan, Shese'ata ima echila daita, her mother, her brother, that they went and married her off with her consent, as a minor, which biblically does not have standing, but Rabbanan introduced it as a way of protecting her. Now, a little girl, 9 years old, they go and they give her 100 or 50 zuz as a dowry. So when she becomes older, when she becomes an adult, she could be lohitzim yadim parnasa rulah. She could extract from them, she could collect from them the appropriate parnasa, the dowry that she's supposed to get. as we explained, either by evaluating the father's personality, or like we said, when we cannot evaluate that, when we have a tenth of the real estate that he has, which is if the court doesn't know his personality. And the chiddush is, and even if the brothers all along were not providing for her the sustenance, and therefore, as we'll explain later on next halacha, that there's no reason for her to say that, oh, I was embarrassed to collect. Why were you embarrassed? They weren't giving you anything. So even if they were not providing her sustenance, even if she didn't protest at the time of marriage, because a little girl is not someone who knows how to protest, and therefore, even if she's, so to speak, being moichel by being quiet, it's not considered valid, and therefore she could collect even at a later point in time when she becomes an adult. However, halacha yud gimel. Let's say the daughter gets married when she was already an adult. She's 18, 19, she's getting married. Whether she's a nair, which is only when she just turned 12, or begeres 6 months later. When she got married, she did not come to claim, oh, my dowry. So of the parnasasa, so she lost that right to the dowry because what's called shtika, the silence, is like an admission, it's a mechila, it's waiving the right to that parnasa. Now, but let's say she didn't get it, but she protested when she's getting married, saying, "Hey, where's my dowry?" So then she could go ahead and collect what's coming to her, whenever she wants to, even at a later point in time. Let's say let's say she became a begeres, over 12 and a half, and she's still in her father's household. So whether she became begeres after he passed away, or whether he left her and when he was still alive, she was already begeres. In Pasco Achin Melassim, if the brothers stopped giving her to feed her a grocery bill from the family estate, and the reason is Shari Ein Lamazon comes around, as we explained in the previous parak, that she actually loses her rights when she either gets engaged or becomes a begeres, and and she's silent and she does not claim, okay, but I'm not getting from the fed anymore. I want my dowry, and she's silent. She doesn't protest of the parnasasa. She has lost her ability because that silence. Why are you being silent? Obviously, you're being meichel. She loses that dowry. Now, but let's say she protests when she becomes a begeres. Whatever the parnasasa, she has not lost her dowry. Now, but let's say let's say the brothers didn't stop feeding her. And out of goodwill, not because they're obligated. Once she becomes a begeres, they don't have to feed her, but they continue feeding their sister even though she's begeres. So here it's different. Even though she doesn't protest, she has not lost her rights to her dowry. As long as they're still giving her food from the estate, because she could claim, because they're still feeding her, even though they're not obligated, and she's still not married, because if she was a begeres and she got married, of course she would have to protest, even though they feed her. But here, she's not married, and they're feeding her. That's why she didn't claim her dowry, because she's embarrassed. Like, I'm going to try to get you guys are giving me more than you have to, and I'm going to say, hey, where's my share? So because of that, then it's not considered the shtik like a mechila, and she does not lose her rights to her dowry. Now, halacha yadal Ram continues. What's if this parnasa, the dowry, is given over into a third party? If someone commands to give to his daughter, so he sets aside for his daughter, for her dowry, this amount of money. But likich ben karke, he had stipulated that it should be used to purchase land, and that land should be used for her dowry. So says the Rambam, whether he was a dying person on his deathbed when he said this, or whether he was healthy, and then he subsequently passed away. And the money is by this third party. Now, but then the daughter says, give it to my husband. Whatever he wants to do with it, he can do with it. So, if she was an adult and she got married already, or shusbiyada, so then that rights are in her ability, because even the father didn't entertain when he gave it to a third party only until she gets married. Because when she gets married, the husband has the rights to utilize it and have benefit from it. So, if she's already married and she's an adult, so then, the husband could use those funds and it doesn't have to go for a piece of land. But if she's still just engaged, not married, then the third party should do as he was told, which he should buy a field with it. And we don't listen to her because it's a mitzvah to fulfill the words of the dying person, of the person who died. Now, and if she's still a minor, not only is she not an adult in marriage, she's not an adult and engaged, she's a minor, then even if she got married, in Shemela, we don't listen to her the husband cannot do whatever he wants to. The shalish goes, and Eliyasa shalish kameshativ ab, rather that third party does as the father commanded him to buy a piece of land with it, because the father's intention is for the good of his daughter, that the husband shouldn't just blow the money, and she's a little girl and she doesn't know any better. So they're in that situation, then even if she's married, the third party has to do exactly like the father commanded, and not to listen to the daughter and let the husband do whatever he wants to do with those funds.